I'm Matthew Galgani with a look at the 8-week hold rule. As we saw in a separate video, you want to take most profits at 20 to 25%, but there is one important exception. If your stock gains 20% or more within 1, 2, or 3 weeks of a proper breakout, hold it for at least 8 weeks from its ideal buy point. Stocks with that kind of power often become the market's biggest winners, rising 100%, 200%, or more. This rule helps you hold through normal volatility so you don't sell a possible big winner too soon. Let's take a look at a couple of examples. In 2004 and 2005, sales of Hansen Natural sodas and Monster energy drinks were exploding, and its stock price followed suit. It broke out of a base here with a buy point of 51.75. By the next week, it was already up over 20% from the buy point, so that triggered the 8-week hold rule. It continued to move up in the coming weeks. In week 7, there was a sell-off. Now be aware that during the 8-week holding period, you'll often see a sell-off that will scare many investors into unloading shares, but history shows you can sit through it. You'll often see the stock shoot up to even larger gains. After 8 weeks, Hansen was up 58%. At this point, you can decide if you want to take your profits or hold on to see if the stock moves higher. If the stock has the traits of a big winner, huge earnings and sales growth, rising ownership by mutual funds, a great return on equity, then it may make sense to hold for a while and see how it plays out. If you'd held on, a couple of weeks later, Hansen's stock shot up again, but quickly pulled back. You got your signal to sell when it crossed the 10-week moving average line. By that point, the stock was up 61%. So by using the 8-week rule, you locked in about 3 times as much money as you would have made if you had sold in the normal 20 to 25% range. The 8-week rule has worked year after year, decade after decade, and AOL in the late 90s is a great example of that. The stock broke out of a cup with handle and was up over 20% within 3 weeks. Just as we saw with Hansen, AOL had a sell-off during the 8-week holding period. While that may have scared off some investors, you had a clear rule that told you to sit tight, and that patience paid off. After 8 weeks, AOL was up 73%, and from there it made a huge move. AOL gained over 400% in just 6 months from the original breakout. AOL and Hansen are just 2 examples of how the 8-week rule alerts you to the fact that you may have a big winner on your hands. And because you have a rule that tells you to hold for 8 weeks, you're able to sit tight and capture what could become very significant gains. Now, before you apply the 8-week rule, the stock needs to meet certain conditions. The stock should be breaking out of a first or second stage base. Later stage bases can be more risky. For more on that, see our video on how to count bases. It must be a leading stock. That means it should be one of the top-rated stocks within its own industry group, and it should have excellent fundamentals, such as solid earnings and sales growth and a high return on equity. The stock should also have good institutional sponsorship. It should be owned by a few top-performing funds, and ideally, you'd see a recent rise in the number of funds owning shares. Use IBD Stock Checkup on Investors.com or MarketSmith to find information on the stock's fundamentals, its ranking within its own industry group, and its institutional sponsorship. If your stock meets these conditions and triggers the 8-week rule, sit tight for that 8-week holding period. It could be some of the most profitable waiting time you ever spend.